Welcome in everybody to this week's episode of Coach's Report. It's me, your host Victor Herrera, and this week we got a special guest. This coach right here, he coached my father in high school and coached against me in high school. He didn't coach me, but he definitely coached against me. And this week we got retired baseball coach Cory Barnes. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing well, Victor, and I certainly appreciate you having me on your show right now. And been looking forward to this. This will be fun.
Absolutely. One thing I'm very, very curious about because when you coached my father, there was a lot of big names that were on that coaching staff that still played a role when I was at Tahoka young and that I always heard about. And one of them being Coach Hines. You know, whenever y'all had y'all's team when my father and like Matt Garcia and all these guys played, how was that coaching room? Like, well, what was kind of going on? What was the dynamic going on?
Well, first off, we had a lot of fun. It was a great staff. It really was. Tudor Draper was our AD and head football coach. He brought myself and Troy Hines in along with Jimmy Burleson. The first year, we also had Robert White, who was our boys basketball coach, and then Coach White left and went elsewhere. Brought in a first year coach named Clint Neighbors. But we were a young staff. Coach Draper was not very old, and we were definitely learning our ways. And with youth, you bring a lot of energy. We were really fortunate to have a lot of great kids. You mentioned Matt Garcia. There were several. That first group that came through, and I'm obviously going to probably leave off some names, and I don't mean to, but Drew Stone, Wes Solomon, Clay Taylor, Matt Garcia, Edward Ramirez, Gerald Cantu, Mike Rodriguez, Steven Rodriguez, who's there coaching now, Sean Brewer, Monty Hale, Reggie Moore, Rocky Moore. There's so many of them. There's so many personalities, and it was a lot of fun. And of course, it was my first job, and it was just some really special times. And I know Troy, Coach Hines was one of those that he poured a big part of his career into Tahoka, and Tahoka is a special place to him. I know that it's a special place to me too. It's a place that's always felt like home to me. Anytime I went there. Matter of fact, I married a Tahoka girl while I was there, and so still get to go. Got to go back several times. And that's part of the reason why I was fortunate to get to go back, and they hired me, to be the high school principal there, which is what I did the previous 2 years. I'm now currently in the role of assistant superintendent. So it's one of those places that's very unique in that there have been several people that have left it, but then have come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of hometown roots there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things there that have never changed. And I think that's something that's very unique about it. But it was, our coaching staff there, we had a good time. There was definitely a lot of opinions in the room, and a lot of, well, we need to do it this way. A lot of, we need to do it that way. But, at the end of the day, I think that the thing that was the most important, there was loyalty towards one another that we had on that staff. If something, came up, we knew that we had one another's backs, and we didn't mind going back to back and doing what we needed to do, and or to do what we felt like was best for the kids and for the program. And so I think that those were all great lessons for me to learn as a young head coach, and something that I really appreciated from that staff, and have a lot of great memories from it.
And you talked about y'all having a lot of opinions. One thing I am curious, back in the day, only one team went to the playoffs. It ain't like now where some districts everybody goes, and it's just a lot more going to the playoffs now versus back then. And back then, was there a sense of more passion about your opinion in the coaching room versus kind of how it is nowadays? Because you could make a difference, and you had a lot more riding on it back then. I feel like if there's only one spot you're vying for.
Mm-hmm. I think that when it was only one or two teams that made the playoffs, and the not only that, but some of the districts were even larger. You didn't have the 14. Excuse me, the 14 or the 5. Excuse me, the 14.
It's a dirt in there.
But I think there was more at stake all the time, not only with us as coaches, but with the kids as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was always that more of a sense of urgency to get things done correctly, to coach hard, to play hard, and to prepare hard as well. And I really felt like that was something that we had going. It was more competitive. I think that now then, a lot of times you look more at, okay, which teams do we need to beat in order to get into the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
We need to take care of this one. We need to take care of that one. When you were talking about one or two teams only going, you better bring your A game to every one of them, because you can't let anybody slip up on you. And so, if it was four teams in the playoffs back then, we'd have been in the playoffs both years that we were there. But that's just not how it was. But it's how it is now. But I'm glad that more kids get a chance to experience it. But at the same time, I think you lose a little bit of the sense of the urgency and the competitiveness in order to get to the playoffs.
And obviously my relationship to knowing you is through my father and Tahoka. Was there ever another school that you might have went to and Tahoka possibly didn't make the cut, or was Tahoka the school that you were going to go to start your career young?
Well, what's kind of funny is that when I started looking at jobs, I did my student teaching at Monterey High School in Lubbock on another great staff, and a staff that I got to join when I left Tahoka. Of course, back then it was completely different than it is now. You didn't have the internet where you could pull up what all jobs are open and whatnot. So you had to kind of rely on hearsay and just different connections that you had in the coaching world. And so those things were really important. But I drew a map, or drew a radius around Lubbock of about 60 miles. I didn't want to get too far from Lubbock. And I had sent resumes or talked to the head coaches of every 11-man school in that area except for Tahoka. So it's kind of a unique. God has a sense of humor about him.
Mm-hmm.
So I am at the Lubbock coaching clinic, and a friend of mine from college was coaching at Tahoka and introduced me to Coach Draper. And that's where that whole thing got started. And so I went down, and I don't know, it just had a great feel to it when I got down there. And once I went down there and met Coach Draper, and obviously met a few of the kids and met the remainder of the staff, I knew that God led me in the right direction. So, a lot of times you just got to trust him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I kind of want to go a little bit further down this timeline. Obviously, when I played in high school, you were at Sundown, and we played against each other multiple times throughout the year and had some good games and had some good memories. One thing I am curious, along your stops along the way, and starting from that young and in the 90s, I don't want to date you, but in the 90s, and then getting to where we're in like the 2013s, 2014s, in that area, kind of what pushed you to be the baseball coach? Because I feel like you could have went either way. And one of the coaches I talked to last time was a baseball guy that converted to a head football coach now. Kind of what pushed you in the baseball direction?
Well, so with Tahoka being the case, on my very first job down there, when Coach Draper put together the staff, Robert White, Coach White was supposed to be the head baseball and head basketball. We go to coaching school, and Coach White says, "Hey, that's too much for me. Basically, I don't mind being an assistant, but going from being a head basketball into head baseball, that's a lot." It's family man, had a little girl, had small children, and I get that. So basically, I drew the short straw at coaching school, and so I became the head baseball coach my very first year out. Fortunately, when I did my student teaching at Monterey, I did my student teaching under a guy named Bobby Magel. Well, Bobby Magel is the winningest baseball coach in the nation. high school baseball coach in the nation. And he'll argue with it. There's somebody that's won more, but that guy gets to count his summer league games. Well, those don't count. You know what I'm saying? Those don't count. And so, but I reached out to him, and he gave me a couple of things to think about, and so we implemented that. And we won back-to-back district championships. Kids did great. They were really good baseball players. I tell the ones that I still visit with from time to time. I wish I knew now what I knew then. I wish I knew then what I know now. There have been some things we'd have done a little bit different, but at the end of the day, they had never had any success. They'd never won a district baseball game in the 6 years prior in that program, and so it was good it was very special. I feel like that we got to win. Then when I left, I was away from baseball for a period of time. With stops at Monterey, stops at Freona, stops at Lockney. We go to Seagraves. I was defense coordinator initially, was there for 2 years. Our AD left. I became the athletic director and head football coach. The school board decided to implement baseball. And so I was the choice for that. And so that got me back into baseball. So I did it for a year, and then I stepped down because I couldn't. It was difficult to do the AD duties, head baseball, head football, and there were some other factors that came into play in that as well. I had to step into some basketball roles as my AD duty, just because we had some changes in the coaching staff. When we left Seagraves, I became an assistant baseball coach, and I felt like I was with some really good baseball coaches at that time, and really helped me to develop as a baseball coach. I was fortunate to have had the experience of being a head coach, but even at that stage in my career, it was important to go back to being an assistant and learn something else. So our head baseball coach at Levelland was a guy by the name of Javier Rangel. Well, Rangel had been an assistant at Monterey under Fred Oliver, who replaced Bobby Magel. Great baseball mind, great baseball coach. When we left there and went to Sweetwater, I was assistant baseball coach in Sweetwater also when I was with Roland Herrera, who had been a head baseball coach down in Corpus Christi and at Snyder. Phenomenal baseball mind. The program at Sweetwater was kind of going in some rough times, and he was really having to really go back to the basics with him in a lot of ways. And so it was great for me to go see how he did that as I got offered the defense coordinator and head baseball job in Sundown when they decided to implement that program in 2009, I believe is when that was. So that's kind of what sparked that. I really feel like in a lot of ways, when I look back on my career, I can see God's handprint on a lot of things, a lot of things in my career. And I think that was one of them. And so at that point, it's one of those things where you just say, you know what, take the reins and let's go. And so I remained there for 6 years. I got out for a year. I went into administration at Friendship High School. And then I had a good friend of mine became the athletic director at Shallow Water, and I went out to Shallow Water. The kicker on the Shallow Water job was they didn't have a position in baseball. I became the head softball coach. Which was good too, because we had a great group of girls. They were phenomenal. They were so much fun to coach, and they were pretty talented too. We won district both years in a row, went 2 rounds, went 3 rounds, and a lot of interesting personalities, and there's not too often that you get called sweetheart and thank you. And, thanks for coaching us hard. It was one of those things where, look, Coach Barnes, we know you hadn't ever coached girls before, but we just want you to coach us like you'd coach the guys. We've seen you coach football during football season. We want that same thing. And so I'm going to coach you like you're athletes, because that's what you are. And that's what we did. And so I did that for 2 years, and then I got moved across the street in Shallow Water over to the baseball field, and that's where I finished up coaching at this point in time. So that's where we're at, and had a great group there too. And we finished one game short of punching our ticket to Round Rock. we won a game one of a series against Brock, but we just couldn't find enough runs to finish our goal. But it was a special group and a special run that we made.
I find it funny that you said as of now, because I almost put actively retired on the graphic, because I'm like, it may change. But Coach, along the way you had these different stops and you met these different people. Kind of just what advice would you have for like a young coach getting into the industry that may kind of in your way, you sent everyone a resume except Tahoka. Mm-hmm. What different advice would you have for somebody that's going into their first job into the industry?
That I've had a feeling that question will probably come up, and I've tried to give it a lot of thought, which is difficult for me to give anything a lot of thought. But what I would want, somebody to tell a young Coach Barnes, or what I would try to pass on to somebody else is some advice I was given by a pastor one time. Know who you are, know who you serve, and know where you're going. And I think that's something that's really important. Our circumstances don't define us. Wins and losses is not what defines us. It's truly the impact that you make on other people's lives. We're called to love others as we love ourselves. And I think that is one of the things that I would really offer, that you really pour into the kids that you get to be around. And I'm not talking about just on a field or in a gym. I'm talking about the kids that are in your classroom too. I think that a lot of times coaches forget the fact that especially high school coaches in Texas, is that they are paid way more for being a teacher than they are for being a coach. They're getting a coaching stipend. They got to teach in that classroom, and they're going to impact a lot more lives in that classroom than they might on the field or in a gym or in a weight room. Those are extracurricular activities. That's extra opportunities to get to impact those lives and to make those changes. And those kids are making that choice to get to be out there. So they're making a choice to be around you, and you're making a choice to be around them by doing what you do. And so there's going to be a little bit more buy-in from those kind of kids. The kids that may not be in those programs, those are the ones that are tough. But those are the ones that I think that when you reach them, man, you've really made a change in somebody's life. And I think that that's really special and really, really, really great. I would tell them to be themselves. I think that a lot of times I know in my earlier years, I had a lot of great role models. I had a lot of great mentors. Troy was one of those guys. Coach Leaf was one of those guys. Chad Terry was one of those guys. And again, I know I'm leaving some guys off, but too many times I think I would try to emulate those guys and try to be like them instead of being like myself. And I think that it's important to be myself, and for us to be exactly who God created us to be, because He made us with a purpose. He didn't make anybody else like us. And so us being ourselves will impact those people that we're around the way He intended them to be impacted when He put us in their lives and when they put them in our lives. I think it's important to be an open book also, and to be willing to sit down and learn. I think too many times now people want, young coaches get in and they want that coordinator job, or they want that head job. There's nothing wrong with being, an assistant for a while and really sitting down and learning and ripping things apart and picking up all the little small details. James Morton, who replaced Coach Leaf at Monterey, once told me, as a position coach, you have known your position. But now then, as you transition into a coordinator's role and someday into a head coaching role, you're going to see how important it is that those positions all fit together for the success of that defense or the program as a whole. Your offense, your defense, your special teams all have to fit together for the team. And man, he hit the nail on the head with that. And there's a lot of different ways to go win a state championship. We can all get in a car and drive to Houston, and we all may take a different road, but ultimately we're all going to get to the same spot. And there's a lot of different ways, and that's proven. That'll be proven this season in football with all the teams that get to go play in the state championship. There's a lot of different ways to get there. One of the big things I think they do is they don't get caught up with all the eye candy that you get out there on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of great stuff out there, but you got to find what really fits your kids. You got to find what can they really do, and then you hang your hat on that, and you really work on drilling those things with your kids and just sticking with it, staying with it. There's nothing wrong with keeping it simple. When they can execute and play fast, they're going to be successful. And I think that's the same thing, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, that what we really try to do is simplify the game as much as possible to let our kids play fast and let them play physical. And then if they took care of a strike zone or took care of the football, if they're fast, physical, and doing those things, then I think good things are going to happen. You're going to win more times than not. And, you know, you may impact a life or two along the way too. And those are really the important things.
Absolutely. You know, I want to go back to, I never heard it said the very first thing that you mentioned about like, know why you're doing it. And, you know, I'm supposed to just step in as a time-to-time assistant with my daughter's softball, but technically they're like, hey, you're now the head coach kind of thing. It's kind of what it feels like. But, you know, I never realized that some people just don't see it that way. And it's sad because a lot of people worry about the wins and losses. And like in second grade, I'm more worried about these girls having fun, wanting to be involved in stuff later on and just learning. And so when a coach came up and said, hey, I like your positivity, I'm like, I appreciate it, but you know, like they're second grade, like it's not that serious. Calm down.
I mean, how serious could it be?
Oh, well, the team we played, it was a completely different team from the tournament. They pick up certain girls for tournament to win. Right. And I'm like, come on, like all these girls deserve a shot. But I also loved how you ended talking about how you got to be able to find out what fits your people. And that's a good segue for what I want to talk about next. So, like, one thing I'm very interested in going from a head football coach to assistant baseball and like these different routes that you've taken and to having the big role in Sundown that you did. And, you know, when you go to these new stops, especially like softball, I feel as a coach, you would find what works for you going into a program. Like, okay, I'm going in first year. This is kind of how I want to handle it. One thing I am curious is when you went to girls or to another school, does that change or do you just keep the same approach and kind of fill it out along the way?
You're asking me for a recipe. And, you know, sometimes recipes are better when you don't really know all the exact amounts. You do a pinch of that and a dash of this and whatnot. So, you know, I think there is somewhat of the same approach. I think you go into it, and I think the first thing you got to do is, you know, and would take, for example, jumping into the girls' side of things at Shallow Water and going to softball. I was fortunate that I had an off season with them. I had an off season period with them, so I got to know them, and I got to know their personalities. I got to know, you know, a little bit about how to push their buttons and whatnot during the fall and during the winter before we got started with softball season. So kind of got to know them a little bit, kind of feel my way around and just get to know their personalities a little bit. And then obviously get to watch them also. I think that's where it starts is finding a way to build that relationship with the kids. And sometimes when you go into a program, you don't necessarily get to do that. You know, I know that when I went to Sundown, you know, and even when I started, there was very few kids that I got to meet early on. You know, you get moved to the community, you try to get involved in the summer program a little bit, you get to meet a few of the kids, and you get a little bit of a sprinkling of it. You get a little bit of a taste of the community and the school and maybe the traditions. And you pick up on some of those things and you begin to figure out ways to have conversations with them and build those relationships. And I think that's a big part of it. You know, what ways to motivate this kid, what motivates this kid, or what type of kid is this? Are they a high achieving, really wants to be coached hard kid, or are they a kid that we're going to have to push them just a little bit more in these areas and really encourage them in some things. And so, you know, I think that there is a little bit of a recipe and a way of doing it. So I would say that there has been things that I did the same at each stop, because that's probably just part of my personality and a little bit of my philosophy. My philosophy is 2 Timothy 2:2. What you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, commit to faithful others who will be able to teach others also. Paul's writing to Timothy. It's his final book. It's his final letter. And he's talking to Timothy, but he's talking to, there's 4 generations that are reached. Paul to Timothy, Timothy to find faithful others to go be able to teach faithful others that would follow. That's why we still have the gospel today, is because it's continued that way. Mm-hmm. That's what we do in education also. That's what we do on the field. I was fortunate enough, I got to coach Steven Rodriguez. Steven's had a great career. He did well at Alpine, he did well at Midland Greenwood, and now that we got him into Hoka, and he's doing the exact same thing. I taught him, he's teaching others. Brent Parrish, I coached Brent into Hoka. We were fortunate enough while we were in Seagraves that he came back and was a student teacher for us there. Well, now that he's a phenomenal baseball coach, great football coach also on Melissa, and he's doing the same thing. And so it's fun to get to watch, kids that are students that grow up and decide, this is what I want to do. So it fires me up that, I coached your dad, and now then he raised you, and now then you're wanting to follow in that coaching, the coaching realm also, because I know how important athletics and sports and winning football games and powerlifting was for your dad. And because I got to live that with him, and he poured those things into you also. And that's part of the reason why you're doing what you do. And so when you get to see those things, that means a lot. But I just think that, there's certain things that you truly believe in that you hang your hat on, and then, you find ways to develop those things. I have a philosophy when it comes to what we do and what we did in softball. There was a lot of baseball that was tied to it. Those girls looked at me sideways sometimes when they'd say, "What do you mean in and out? What do you mean get a lead off? We don't have that." And I said, "Well, you got this. Your primary lead is what they call a secondary lead, in baseball. Yeah. So you're on base, but so there were some things there. And I know pitching wise, they really looked at me funny, because I had a pitching philosophy that I wanted to follow of where we wanted to throw pitches and the same type pitches. But I also had to learn them and what they could throw and what they couldn't throw. And then as we began to develop this game plan together of, okay, you can throw this pitch here well. That I want the pitch thrown there. It doesn't have to be the one I always want, but it's the one that you can throw there. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of changed my philosophy a little bit. It did some, or it modified. It would probably be a better term for it, to be real honest. But the philosophy is still the same, but the way to go about getting it done might have changed a little bit. So I think that's a big part of it. So.
Would you recommend for male coaches that maybe never thought about it, if given the opportunity to coach women's sports, to kind of add that versatility to them?
I think they'd be shocked about how competitive they are and just how coachable they really are. They're very coachable, and they are very competitive. The other thing that they do is they get over it quick. They get over it quickly, and if something goes bad, they'll be upset. But they're ready. They really do a good job of moving on and getting over the past, and so I think I enjoyed that. With girls, I think it's important to remind them that they're better than they think they are. With guys, sometimes you got to remind them, well, what, you're really not as good as you think you are. So there's a balance. There's a balance there, and so that was something I had to learn also. But I enjoyed coaching them. I felt like I did. I was very fortunate that I had a special group of young ladies to get to coach. But if again, I think it's a thing where you allow God to open up doors for you, and you walk through those things. And I think that He rewards you when those things take place. And I've been rewarded in my career. I've had a great career. I'm much better than I deserve because of the kids I've gotten to coach.
That's a good segue. I don't want to keep you too long, so we'll start to wrap this up. But over 200.
I can go all night, man.
you got your little plaque, and I saw it, and it's on our graphic. First
Mm-hmm.
question: where's the plaque at? And
I have it
secondly,
hanging in my office there in
okay,
Tahoka. I do.
okay, I like it. I think it's awesome when coaches get that because players get the trophies, but when a
Mm-hmm.
coach earns one, it's nice to give recognition and put it out there. And secondly, if you could describe I won't say close ended career because
Mm-hmm.
you never know what might happen. But if you could describe it in one word, what would it be?
We had a saying on one of the staffs that I was on that the things that matter in life are Christmas cards and funerals. And when I get a Christmas card from a former player, or someday if they'll show up for my funeral, I'll be all right.
Mhm.
I think that when you take the time to do those little things like that, I think it
Mhm.
goes a long way. And that I think that's one of those things that really shows somebody that you care about them.
Mhm.
And it's I won't say that I probably didn't step on some toes and hurt some feelings and have some regrets about some things that I've done coaching wise. But by and large, I hope that my kids know that the kids that I did get to coach know that I loved them and that it's always a phone call away. And I think that's what good coaches do.
Mhm. Absolutely, I have to agree with you. I definitely still have some of them relationships with my former coaches, and now you're part of the Coaches Report family. So send me an address, and we got plenty of Christmas cards every year. I'll be sure to send you up one from San
Sounds
Antonio.
great. Yeah, I can do that.
Coach, one thing that I ask every coach at the end, I've made gratitude a more part of my life. I feel like it goes unnoticed. There's always something to be grateful for. And in today's day and age, a lot of
Mhm.
people want to complain, and I fall victim to it at times. But what are three things that you're grateful for, Coach, right now?
Well, first and foremost, I'm grateful to have a Savior that loved me enough to die for me on the cross for all my mess ups. Um, Galatians 2:20 says, "I've been crucified in Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives lives in me.
Mhm.
He loved me enough to die for me." And I think that's the thing that I'm most that I am most grateful for is that despite all of my ugliness, despite all of my despite all of my sin, I know where I'm going.
Mhm.
And so I'm very grateful for that. Second thing, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for a wife that loves God. Number one, she loves me deeply. She loves our kids and our grandkids and our daughter-in-law greatly, and I'm grateful to have that. I'm grateful to have children and grandchildren and our daughter-in-law, and I thank God every day that I get to see them, and they still come around and despite me coaching them, they still come around and hang out and we have a good time. And, so I'm grateful for family that God's blessed me with because I wouldn't be who I am without them at all. And then lastly, obviously, I'm grateful for every kid that's ever put on a uniform that played for me, whether it was an assistant role, a coordinator role, a head coach role, whatever it was. If they cared enough to come out and play hard and and put on the uniform, I am very grateful for them because I think that's something that's obviously really special because they give up a lot to get to play. They give up a lot of their time and a lot of their energy, and it's not easy to play. It's not easy to be a competitor. It's not easy to be an athlete, and they pour out a lot in everything that they do. And so I'm grateful to have kids that have played hard and have put on a uniform for me as a coach.
Yeah, well, Coach, I wish that we could have shared some years together. I wish that I could have kind of seen what a program under you looks like.
I'd
But
love to
I'm
have you on
glad.
the teams.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't have had to pitch
Oh, yeah.
around you.
Oh, hey, I remember that one time you threw it at the backside, pulled a little Bull Durham on me. I still think about that from time to time. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah.
Well, I still got after our pitcher because he still kept it too close when he did that. I'm like, he might hit that. I've seen him hit. I don't want him to hit it. I don't want it anywhere near him.
Absolutely. You know, my brother had a friend up there in Sundown, and he was the kid that both times in the games we played y'all our senior year, I hit him in the shin. And like I vividly remember that kid. I'm like, you listen, I'm sorry, man.
I'm sure he remembers you too.
Oh yeah. You know, Coach Barnes, this is kind of the end of the show where if there's some that we didn't touch on that you feel should be advice for a young coach, or just something that you want to say, this is kind of me handing over the mic to you, give you the floor, as to say.
Yeah. Have fun. You know, it's a great ride. It's a great career. You know, I think it's really important to have fun and keep things in perspective. Wins are going to come, losses are going to come. Parents are going to get upset. Parents are going to praise you. They're going to be upset with you. And you know, it's just it's part of the crazy business, but it's a great business to be in. I'm grateful that I got to do it for a period of time. And again, you know, the right thing comes along. You never know, because I did have to hand God the steering wheel. So there's nothing that's off the table. And so, you know, we'll do whatever he commands and go forth from there. But man, you know, I think that getting into coaching today with the way kids, the speed and the strength that they have, desire to win and desire to get to be seen and noticed and play. I think it's a great time to get into this profession for young coaches and have a really good time and a great career.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, Coach Barnes. And, you know, I just want everybody to know that I'll have that graphic ready for when you release where you're going to go coach next, just in case.
Sounds good, Victor. You'll be one of the ones I contact. How's that?
All right. You have a good
one.
That
head coaching job somewhere, you holler at me. I mean, you never know.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
You have a good one, Coach.
All right. You too, Victor. Thank you so much.
No problem, Coach. Have a good one.
You do the same.